recording started. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Hacking HR Sofia chapter. Hacking HR is an initiative that is international with more than 85 plus chapters across the globe. So today you have the opportunity to attend an event that was organized by Sofia, Bulgaria. And our team is present over here. You can see us on video and also our nice speakers, Thomas and Mia. So we can go to the next slide where we will see a few details about the initiative. Of course, you can always look up Hacking HR website, also the LinkedIn page, Facebook page, and Twitter. So up till now, there were more than 2,000 events, organized events. There is one that is organized as a global Hacking HR event in 2021. I highly recommend for you to visit it. And a lot of, as you can see, more than 60,000 people involved in the initiative from each chapter. So quite a great audience to be a part of. You can also become a member and access the resources that you would be interested in. Okay, and on the next slides, we will show you a bit, just a quick sneak peek on the team and also our event that we've organized so far. My name is Yanica Ilieva, and the team members, if we can go for a second back to the previous one. Team members, all ladies. Of course, we had two more members who joined us last year and currently are not a part of the team, but we also invite them to join us with their initiatives. So Jordanka, Mirjana, and Marinella are the current team members of the Hacking HR Sofia chapter, and we together organize these events together. So a few sneak peeks on the previous events. The first one we opened in 2019 on the 23rd of October. We opened with a very interesting lady, Dr. Mariana Tudorova. She's the futurist that represents Bulgaria, but also she works with futurists from various countries, from the States and Europe. And she was discussing her view on the future of work. We had that session in a nice venue, and afterwards, let's say we were in a very different situation and format. So the next one that we organized was a panel that was focusing on, it was on the 28th of May. As you can calculate back a bit, it was already a couple of months after the COVID situation, and we had invited two people from business side who are CEOs, Angelina and Petko in this case, from the business perspective, and also Velina and Silvia from, I would say, psychologists and stress expert perspective, how they see the situation, the topics they would like to share with the wider audience, and how they could solve different cases they came across. Later on, we followed a bit with another online event, which was the success story of one of the telecoms that are represented here in Bulgaria. Of course, it's an international one called Telenor. And Kamen and Kaya shared how they digitized their HR administration. So we could also talk about the business case, about the benefits, cost-wise, and let's say intangible benefits that could that came out of this initiative, and how they intend to proceed further. Of course, this initiative resulted also in a product that was further on sold by the sold to other customers by the telecom. So not only providing that kind of services, but also products, which was an interesting turn of events. And of course, on the next slide, you will see the introduction to our topic today, Agile Recruiting in a nutshell, and how to manage in VUCA. So we have today with us Mia Kolmodin and Thomas Eklöf. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that really nice introduction. I think, I'm trying to manage this clicker here too. So yeah, Agile Recruiting in a nutshell. And Thomas and I will walk you through this, and hopefully we'll have some questions that we can answer afterwards, right? So maybe we can start by telling the story, Thomas, about the poster.
Yeah, it goes back actually to, it was me and one of our team members, Frida, who started having a discussion. And Frida is a consultant within Agile HR, and we were talking a lot about kind of the transformation within HR and hoping to see kind of further development within recruitment, which is pretty much my background foremost. I've been a recruitment expert since like the 10 last years. And we kind of initiated discussion, I think it was almost a year ago now, and then we tried to involve a few others as yourself and also Björn Sandberg and I think Nils Hallén was a part of it as well, and a few others to kind of get a good perspective what this could mean in reality and how we could get started with the concept and really figure out if it's possible to kind of align the agile ways and recruitment, which is kind of different side of Agile, I think.
Mm.
And
so
yeah.
You and Niels, you're experts in recruiting. You've been writing books about this, and of course working a lot with this. And Frida,
Exactly.
she's from HR, and she's an Agile HR professional. She's also a podcast celebrity, I would say, within HR and Agile HR in Sweden. So we also had a discussion around this in our pod. And so really good creative work. And myself, I'm an Agilist and an expert on Agile, and we together as a cross-functional team merged our ideas and looked at this from different perspectives, right? And this is some of the sketches. So the work with this poster that we created took around, I don't know, 8 or 9 months or something.
Yeah, 8 months, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it took a very long time. So it's like giving birth to a child almost. And it started with this paper sketches and ideas from different people, and then merging them into sticky notes, which we, of course, Agilists love sticky notes. It was really well done. You could, create new ones and throw them away and sketch together in a good way and get a feeling and understanding about what are we talking about and what are we trying to, help people to create perspectives on.
Especially, and I think that's kind of the goal with this. Before you move on, I mean, kind of our vision was to help how people recruit today, and you can do it differently and kind of adopting the agile mindset. And here, I think the collaboration between two different camps, if you say, has worked really well. And I think our aim is really kind of help people how you could move on towards more agile in recruitment. And hopefully this is just a kind of starting point. So this is not giving us to you the answers, this is how you do it, but this is kind of giving you, this is how you could do it. So this is a starting point where I hope a lot of people will contribute further as well.
Good. And so what we would like to start with here in this presentation also is why Agile? Why do you work Agile? To understand when do you need to apply these principles and these ideas and ways of working. And if we would think about us driving a car and going away maybe for a trip together with our friends, we know that we have a goal, we want to go somewhere, but we don't really plan the whole trip in detail, right? All the turns and all the things that we're going to do in our driving, that's going to happen continuously as maybe things emerge along the way. So this is also why we want to work Agile. We want to be able to change the plan and adapt depending on what's going on and the context around us to handle this complexity and fast-moving pace that we have. So think about yourself as a driver of this car and driving it in a safe way, having your friends with you and not getting anyone in panic or anything. And of course, we have felt this a lot now during COVID all around the world, that the world and everything can change very rapidly. So I think many of you might have experienced actually working in a very agile way, but maybe under a lot of stress. So how can you do this in a sustainable way and actually adapt continuously and always deliver value? So making sure your friends arrive at this, whatever we're going to, in a safe way, and your coworkers then, of course, having a great experience along the way. So to handle the unknown, this is usually why we want to work Agile. And in the beginning, we know a couple of things and we can go out and maybe understand and learn a little bit more. in the first round circle here, what we know in the beginning, that's usually what traditional ways of working and processes are really good at to handle, but they're not so good at handling stuff that's going to happen along the way. So getting out to the unknown and continuously adapt and change the processes, our way of working, and the solution is what we need to do. And this is where Agile is helping us. And to handle ambiguity. So a lot of times we see things in very different ways in the beginning, like we did with our poster where we created it. We had stickies, we had different ideas, there were different discussions. And I'm the designer in this, I was trying to figure out what you guys were talking about. Sometimes I didn't really understand, and maybe you have very different perspectives on things, but we were trying to create something together. And that's usually how it is in the beginning. So that's why we want to do prototypes, like our paper prototypes, that we can maybe throw away, get some feedback, see if we're on the right track, maybe invite some of the customers. So this is actually our first customer introduction, or this interaction that we have in this podcast here, at least for me, or podcast, when I say webcast, we're going to call it.
Webinar.
Maybe we get some feedback afterwards if this was good stuff or not. So having those kind of interactions helps us to create a shared understanding and to deliver value along the way. And this is to handle VUCA. So VUCA, now I had it written down here. It's, of course, it's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So to be able to handle this kind of complex environments, we need to work in a flexible and adaptive way, which agility then is and helping us to do. And this is the end result as it is right now, at least. Of course, maybe we'll adapt along the way too, as everything that we do. And these are the different parts. So we created two different areas here: Agile for recruiting and recruiting for Agile. So helping to work in an Agile way together with the team and starting to work with the recruiting process and adapting and improving that in an Agile way, but also recruiting for an Agile organization and how to do that. Thomas, did you have anything you want to add in on this?
No, exactly. And I think it's usually when you see something that's quite graphic and a lot of text, it's usually hard to kind of understand. So we're going to walk you through it, maybe not everything in detail, but most of the mostly important parts we will walk you through and kind of try to explain our thought behind it. And as you said, Mia, we were also hoping to get feedback from people. And everyone is free to download this poster at Danny People's website, so everyone can download it and get their hands on it and go deeper after the webinar. But you know, you're spot on, and I mean it's important to understand that it's divided into two ways. So the left side is for how Agile really combines in recruitment, and the right side is more, okay, how do we do in an Agile context, in an Agile company or organization, or even in an Agile team, which is probably the most common way. I think today still Agile is mostly within IT, at least that's my experience. I think that's where,
and it's also a really important ingredient if you want to become an Agile organization, to start within all different areas and processes to actually apply Agile. So this will help your organization also to become Agile.
Right.
So Agile for recruiting, let's start there. And here we've created something based on something called Modern Agile, which are guiding principles for actually becoming Agile. So here we look for potential, looking for potential instead of readiness. And I know, Thomas, this is something that you have very dear in your heart, right?
Yeah, exactly. So pretty much we had a lot of thought behind how to kind of create this in a sense that it makes sense. And I think what we ended up with is kind of, instead of what most people do today, looking at recruitment, you had kind of figure out what kind of selection method you want to use, and you look for past experience, or as it's called,
CVs,
readiness.
and yeah.
Exactly. So I think we wanted to go away a little bit from that. Of course, that's going to be perhaps a part of it. It's up to every organization really to decide in their own recruitment, but we wanted to kind of look forward instead and see that you don't really fit people in a specific box, because the future is changing even faster. So you probably need other things to look for to really be successful over time with the recruitments that you do. So
increase the driving capability and being, able to actually move away from hinders. So helping people not to fit in a box, but actually have potential for growth.
Exactly. So that's why we wanted more that you focus perhaps on traits, motivators, and capabilities, and also behaviors in the end. And that's really much what you can evaluate as well. Is more looking at what kind of behaviors are we looking for in this organization. So that's comes down to more of a different mindset, I think, as well. When you look at recruitment today, you usually only go to redness to look at hard data. And I think more and more people see that in these kind of environments where it's a lot of complexity, there's going to be challenges, and you need to look a bit broader sense in people. So that's why I think potential is a key factor in this poster.
It really is. And then creating value, which means that you continuously improve your way of working, also delivering value continuously in maybe the recruiting process, and having a mindset around this, that's always being able to deliver something, right?
Yeah. And I look at my own experience. I've learned this is the way that you should recruit. I worked in a recruitment agency, and this is how you do it. And that's what I did. And I never really challenged myself enough. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, that you do what you do and you learn it, and that you do it well. But in the end, I think the mindset really needs to shift into always being the mindset that, okay, what can I do better until next time? Even if there is in specific interview or the whole process in general, every little thing you can always have that mindset that you want to improve continuously. That will be something that creates more value also.
But also keeping maybe people in the process and not maybe closing the recruiting process. And like in Dandy People in our company, we always recruit, but we don't have any recruiting ads. We don't have a role that you search for. So you apply because maybe you find an interest in what we do. And we got people from all over the world, even though we're actually based in Stockholm, who wants to become a dandy, which is they're looking for this purpose, and they want to become a part of maybe a community, and they want to help the customers and organizations to evolve. And that's more what we're looking for, to have a mindset, but also they need to have an experience in doing this. But it's actually just this potential. And then in the process, we create value by actually having them come and meet with us and talk to them, even though it might be possible in 6 months for them to actually join Dandy. But then we know that we have these people who are really good. We can keep them in our community. We can do great stuff together during that time. So actually we had a person, Carrie Kelly, coming. She applied about January, sent us a video. Hello, dandies. I want to become a dandy. Super cool. We had a recruiting process, and now last Thursday, she moved to Sweden. And she actually joined us after summer and started to work with us. So it can really be a continuous process where we create value along the way, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we'll get back to what that kind of means for recruiters. I think a lot of people know kind of how you do that, but we're going to dig deeper into that in future slides here. So, but let's, I have myself during this creation, I've had kind of difficulties in understanding the difference between creating value and learning, which is more about testing new ideas. But can you explain a bit more about the difference here for the viewers?
So creating value is actually the learning value continuously, and also maybe improving your process so that you can manage to do that in a good way, adapt and have a mindset around that. And learning, that's about daring to experiment and continuously, of course, have learnings along the way. And maybe sometimes when you do stuff, it's more for the learning than for the actual result. And how you set up the organization and the processes and the way of working and the teams so that they can actually explore and continuously improve everything that you do. So in the recruitment process, having learning as built in the process, getting feedback continuously, but also maybe when you actually adapt and develop a new way of working within the process and how you how you collaborate with maybe people that want to join or people within your company. Have that type of learning continuously and improve parts of it and maybe deliver it and then have feedback. So these two goes hand in hand, of course.
So pretty much creating value is more about the mindset behind it, and the learning part is more about the practical aspects of the daily work, you would say.
Exactly.
Brief summarize.
Brief summary.
Okay, and the final kind of part of this, at least the modern agile recruitment version of it, is the psychological safety. And I think this is especially important for many teams, but if we look at it in the candidate perspective, as we've done in this scenario, is that it's more about understanding how the candidate's experience is along their journey from pretty much before you even know about the company to until you pretty much leave the company and perhaps even come back. So it's a whole kind of employee experience that a lot of people work with today and try to improve. But in this context, I think also it's more about setting perhaps the right tone in interviews or in any kind of iteration or connection you have with the candidates, I would say.
And we had lots of talks while creating this about psychological safety, because that's the prerequisite for becoming agile and working with learning and experimentation and finding the potential. So having people to actually be able to be themselves and to bring their whole self maybe to work and be able to do that also in the recruiting process, because then we can get to know each other and understand that they actually have this readiness. Otherwise it will be this kind of maybe where you just show your CV, answer some questions, but you need to connect in a deeper way and have people actually feeling safe. And how do you do that in the process? Do you give them different opportunities, different ways of maybe taking part of different parts of the process? Should they be able to choose how to do it depending on if that makes them feel safe or not? So we had really good discussions around this.
Yeah, and then that's, I think, where we have also had most discrepancy, I think, between our, because for me and also another team member from the recruitment side, where usually you learn that within the selection process, it's important that you have a standardized process and that you evaluate each candidate fairly according to the same principles. But here it's pretty much where the biggest differences with really traditional recruitment is and the agile recruitment, that you have to be a bit more flexible. Still, I think it's very important that you evaluate people fairly, so the process is fair. But it doesn't mean that you cannot change the process during the way. It means that you can, but then you have to, perhaps you want to take candidates further, you have to reevaluate them and can I involve them again according to
maybe give them a second chance. Yeah.
So I think this is also something that we are hoping to get some further insight into what people are kind of safe to try, which is part of the psychological safety logo, exactly. I would say. So
psychological safety.
This is something I think everyone needs to decide for themselves and their organization what they think is worth it. But that's pretty much where Agile comes into this. It needs to be a bit more adaptive and change according to whatever the context you're in, and that's where I think it's also
and
important.
The individual.
And the individual, exactly.
Good. Then we jump on. So learning organization. This is one piece and one model that we use a lot when we talk about agility. That in this model, which is called Agile Onion, you start with the tools and processes and the practices, and this is somewhere here you can train for skills, and this is one of the things that we talked about, right? You can train people for this, and this is more visible and less powerful. You could see this in the CV, right? And you can help people to train something. And maybe we want to hire for attitude. That this is something that I heard a lot within companies, and these things are then around values and principles. But then the mindset has to come here, and this is where it gets really, really powerful. And here we have learn agility, which is part of the poster also, right? We have a couple of different pieces within that, and that's where you create the most value.
And I think in general, when we're talking about Agile, I think there's a lot of misconception, I would say, and I'm not that experienced within the field, but when I meet people that are trying to kind of make this change into Agile in general in the organization, that's where people start with the tools and processes and practices, but that's really where they get stuck because they don't really change the mindset or the guiding principles how to make this kind of transformation. So I think this is something we'll probably see with Agile recruitment as well, that you kind of want to add practices that are good, or tools like Kanban board or whatever. You start there, which is fine, but don't really miss changing the mindset of continuous learning and stuff like that, because if you don't, then I think you won't get the value that you're looking for with the Agile recruitment.
Exactly. So it goes both for the actual recruiting, but also for how you do it. So this can be applied on kind of both sides of this poster, I would say. But aiming for learning agility and applying that continuously, and also how you actually evaluate people in this using those principles. And then ways of working. Of course, as a recruiting team or recruiters, you should also work Agile, which means that you need to work in a team. And the best way to do that is to find and create a cross-functional team. And it could be that this cross-functional recruiting team, which is supporting the organization in the best way possible, actually have a couple of other capabilities as well, which could be marketing. How do we connect with the recruitees, the people that we want to bring in? The user experience of this process might need to be something we work with together with people with that knowledge. And maybe facilitation, how to facilitate this process if we're working face-to-face with people and teams and create a safe space. So this could be an opportunity to actually start to work with other functions across the organization and bring them in to create an Agile recruiting team. And then we need to figure out, so what are the capabilities that our team need? It could be that you, of course, have more than one recruiter. So it doesn't mean that these capabilities need to be brought in by one individual. It's not a role, but we need to know these things in some way. So maybe you have a recruiter expert who's also really good at marketing, and that's perfect. Then you get two capabilities in one person. So think also about how can I broaden my expertise and also learn more and help the team in a better way to reach these goals. So think about also in your own team, how to create new capabilities. And then working together in a Kanban board. And I'm going to show an experiment or an example on how that might look. So visualize the work and work with maybe one thing at a time. And then make sure that you move these things as quickly as possible across the board so that you actually recruit people in a faster way than maybe you do traditionally. So it helps you to maximize flow and to increase collaboration within the team. Also visualize whatever you guys are doing for the rest of the organization. And I've seen some really good examples in organizations where I worked, where the recruiters, they have these boards. If they work with one part of the organization, maybe a couple of teams, then they have that recruiting board at those teams. So they can also invite those teams in their stand-ups, and they could also collaborate within the process, because different parts of the process will probably then involve those teams. So it's one good way to actually visualize it.
What's a stand-up for the people who doesn't know?
Yeah, stand-up. Good, Thomas. That's in this process where you work. You actually have a meeting every day, usually 15 minutes, and you talk about what are the goals for today, what are the things that we will do, and who will do what, and how can we collaborate to reach our goal for the day. And that could mean that in some of these meetings, the stand-ups, you actually invite other people, because this is where we are in the process. We are working together with the team. We're going to have maybe a evaluation of the person coming in, where we actually maybe do something together with the team. And then, of course, they should be involved in that, and everyone can see what we're doing. So starting to have a little bit of agile ways of working within the team, having these stand-ups, visualize our work, and then also start to improve our process continuously. That helps us to continuously improve and experiment and make it safe for us. And then also continuously, it helps us to deliver value in a much higher pace. And that's usually one of the keys to help the organization to become agile, because recruiting process then needs to be quicker, because the teams, they want to have help in a much quicker way than maybe in a traditional organization. So this is meeting their needs in a better way.
I think, yeah, that's especially important, I think, in larger organizations where you as a recruiter often have many points of contact, and you lose a lot of time because you have fully stocked probably. So and this kind of way of working makes it a lot easier to kind of make people in the loop in the process, and to know where you're at, and to know how they can contribute a bit more. So you get closer to whoever you need to collaborate with.
And also you prioritize what you do. So you don't work as an individual on something. It's not your tasks to finish. It's actually our task as a team. And we're going to work together to deliver as quickly as possible and on what's most prioritized. So it also helps to enable this quicker deliveries in a better way. And this is an example of a recruiting Kanban board, which could be the steps that you have. So what you do when you start to work as an agile recruiting team, you visualize the process that you have today. So those are the steps that you add in. So here you could see that we have a backlog, which means we have people in the pipe already. Those could be people we have connected to. Maybe they connected with us. So they are in our recruitment pipe. We need to bring them through in some way. And then we might start with a phone interview, personality test, a face-to-face vision meeting, maybe. And that's I've learned that it's called a grandpa meeting, something really weird in my world, but maybe that's with the CEO of the company or something like that. And then a competency test, then we take references, and then we have a security check, and then maybe we have an offer or no. So it could be either way. So this could be a standardized recruiting process. And what we do then is we look at this process and how can we improve the process. So we always start with what we have, and then we move into how can we improve this. Maybe we want to look at, so cycle time, how long does it take for something to move across the board? And we measure that time by just adding the date when this person came into the backlog. And how long does it take for moving this person across the board and making a decision and coming up with whatever we want to do? If it takes 9 weeks, maybe we set a goal for 4 weeks or 4.5 weeks. So we could divide it by half, maybe. And that's going to probably help the organization in a better way. And then we look at the bottleneck, like it said. Where does the thing actually stop on this board? What's holding us back? And here you could see it's actually the competency test. So it means we have stuff in line, or lots of stuff before this part of the process. So we have this face-to-face vision meeting, obviously, is doing good, but when it's done, it's not moving forward. So it means the competency test is the bottleneck. So we visualize the bottlenecks in the process. And this could be, maybe it's just one person who can do the competency test. So maybe we have not really connected well enough with the teams, maybe who are doing the competency test, and we need to collaborate better with them. So we can find out where the problems are in the process, and we can remove those problems. And we can also maybe remove whole parts of the process. Maybe we don't need references, or maybe we don't need to do the personality test, or something else that we find. Or maybe sometimes it's needed for some roles and sometimes not. So we can also adapt the process in a good way. Actually, behind Thomas, I see him right now in the video, you can see this part of the Kanban board for our recruiting process at Dandy. So that's the first part of that. We have a backlog, and then we have the different phases in the process. So it's just up on the board. Yep, it's up there. Small sticky notes, and it's just a name on that. So sometimes you feel, oh, how can we reveal this sensitive information around these people? It's just a name. It could also be something that you maybe call these people initials, maybe. And you as recruiters, you have all the data, but up on the board, it's something that people won't really understand who is about. So thinking about safety is, you can do that in a really good way by just using sticky notes, or digitize it and just use enough data so that you understand who it is. And business critical. This is something that we talked about previously.
Exactly. So I think a lot of people will recognize this from the concept of talent acquisition, what it really means, and kind of, and this is where we kind of integrate that perspective or way of doing things to this agile recruitment, but not specifying as talent acquisition. But the key element that is most important is really to move away from being a reactive department or process or whatever you want to call it. Because I think a lot of people today, you get a need for something, you need someone resigns, someone quits, someone, whatever, you want to expand or anything, and you look and you, okay, now we need to start. And I think that's kind of the biggest pitfalls in recruitment, because today, or at least before COVID, where everyone pretty much had difficulties in finding the right competence. I think a lot of people still have those difficulties and will have in the future again. So I think now is a good time to start to kind of be more proactive, have a more continuous process as you do at Dandy. And I think if you start small steps with the current recruitment or the next recruitment that you're hoping to start soon, and I think start there. Okay, who are we looking for, and how can we attract these candidates to our organization? And even it's all about pretty much employer branding, showing who you are in kind of the right way, being honest to people about who you are, being transparent, and sort of showcase in many different scenarios. You can be in a webinar, or you can invite people to your office. You can have whatever stuff to kind of showcase who you are and what you do and why you're doing it. So that's where a purpose comes in, and it's very important when you're working with recruitment and employee branding in general, is that you need to show people the true purpose of your organization and what you want to contribute with. And that's why this is very business critical, I would say. And that's why we named this part of the process as business critical. And I think a lot of leaders out there today really needs to understand that recruitment isn't something that you do on an on and off basis. Because of course, if you're a small organization, maybe you do it once in a while, but the larger corporation you have, the more recruitments you do, the more you understand that this is something we need to come back to on and on again, especially when you have difficulties in finding candidates. You need to really kind of attract people to your organization.
And who is best to attract the right people? Probably the right people within your organization. So you probably need to collaborate a lot and ideate around how can we involve people from outside, build this kind of networks maybe, and create safety. And you can achieve a lot of things by working together with people in the organization.
Exactly. And here I think employer branding and recruitment meets kind of the organization. And if you have an agile recruitment team that is cross-functional, then you can invite people in. Okay, so how can you involve others, and how can you interact with the outside world in a better way? And this is what really employee branding is, that you want ambassadors to kind of sell the organization in that sense, and kind of show, okay, this is who we are. We want good people to come here, and this is why, and this is what we do, and hopefully this brings value to whoever is interested. And I start communicating a lot more than you probably do today. But that's also the bringing people in this, and then you'll get a lot more ideas on how you can do this, because this isn't like one answer it's going to fit for everyone. This is unique for every organization, how you do this best.
And one good example that maybe some people have seen is the videos from Spotify around the engineering culture. That was the culture that they wanted to build. So Henrik Kniba, who's an agile coach, he created 2 videos around their culture, their way of working, and how they organize, how to scale the organization. And that's basically what people today call the Spotify model. But those videos were for recruiting, but also for helping the organization to understand this is how we want it to be in the future. Some people think that's the truth. This is how it is. And it's not how it is. But that's a vision, it's a goal, it's a way of thinking. And it's also, they share it externally because that builds their brand. It creates PR. It has enormous effect on everything around the world, because people are so interested in seeing these things. And people are so attracted by Spotify and their way of working because of these videos. They've helped enormously.
Yeah, and I know that's a kind of, because when we talk about employer branding and being really honest, I think it's good for PR and good for getting recognition, which is important. if you want to attract people, they need to know who you are. So, I mean, for marketing wise, they've made tremendous success, but I think there's also a bit of a risk in doing these things if you're not really, because now I don't think that's what they were aiming for, is showing them who, showing another side of who
No,
you're really
they want
not.
it to be that way.
Yeah.
But maybe sometimes people that I know that join Spotify, they say, oh, I thought it was so much better. I thought it was like in the videos. So that could have been clearer. Otherwise, you're kind of tricking people into the organization, which is not good.
No, exactly. So I think you need to be honest, but I think yes, it comes down to maybe a communication error. You kind of, this is our vision, as you said. This is what we aim for. So you need to be clear when you're communicating whatever you're doing, that this is something that you're aiming for, and not something that you are. But I think this is very common to most organizations. When we talk about values in general, is that you have a lot of values. Probably this is something you're aiming for, or the management are aiming for, but not too often. It's not the case in the organizations.
But in a world where no one can recruit developers and engineers, they are succeeding really well, right? So they have like 200 people searching for one position, and how many can say that they have that? So I think you can work a lot with that.
Yeah.
Should we move on?
Yep.
Yeah. Oops. I need to click.
This goes into what we previously talked about, psychological safety for in the candidate perspective, I would say. And this is also today a lot of people out there in HR talk about candidate experience and employee experience, and these kind of journeys that I think more and more are trying to map up and understand, which are the kind of the points of contact we have with the candidates. And from our perspective in Agile recruitment concept, I think it's really important that you do work with this, but you don't forget the people experience over the process, which means that we are kind of designing a process, but you really need to, look in the candidate shoes in that sense, and then understand from their perspective, are we doing the right things in their view? I think the most common error today would be lack of communication. I think we all know it. We all probably experience it, and I think many recruiters don't have the time or have the energy to prioritize this communication. But I think that's where you probably should start. But there's many aspects.
See the people in the process, right? And
Exactly, and something we discussed during the kind of sessions we had was that if you go into the process as a candidate, and when you go out, and if you don't get the position, you as a company or organization really wants people to, even if they don't get the job, you want them to advocate for you, and how can you do that as an organization? And that's where I think we probably could develop people, even though if they don't get the job. I mean, as you in your process, you have personality tests or some other tests that kind of give people insight. Most of the times people don't get that insight. That's something you could start with.
So you could help them to grow and learn during the process, and see that as a learning process even for them.
Yeah, and I think that from one side, it shows that you give importance for the candidate. You want to give something back, which will send a great message to everyone else. And probably all of the candidates that come in wants to apply again. So I think it really goes down to also creating a great employer brand for the whole brand.
We actually, in Danny, when we have candidates which are maybe not experienced enough in what we do, then we can't really send them out to our customers, because that's going to be a little bit tricky for them to handle. So we offer to help and mentor them a little bit. And then over a year or maybe a couple of years, we can help them to become as experienced as maybe they need for assignments that we have. So you can help and grow their experience also to match what are the things that we are looking for in a good way. So that's almost like getting the job, right?
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Good. So recruiting for Agile, this is the other part. Co-delivery. So this is a continuous process where we need to collaborate and work like we talked about. So people from the Agile Recruiting team needs to collaborate with people in the organization. And if you're recruiting for teams, then you need to maybe involve them in the process and do that in a way that works also for the team. So having recruiter and agile coaches maybe working together and working together with the team. And here we have a warning for bias. This is something that we talked a lot about. And I think we have a piece of content on that too.
Yeah. Okay. But before you move on, this is kind of the agile recruitment team we were talking about before, and in an agile context, this goes, of course, really well, because usually you have an agile coach and you're working with a specific team. So I think here it comes down to how could we kind of match the competencies, as we said before. And this is as important to showcase that you don't need to have a specific role as a recruiter or coach or whatever. It's more about the capabilities that you have. So even though if you aren't an expert within any field, you still kind of figure out, okay, what competencies or capabilities do we need in this team to be successful? And if you need to take...
That could be something that you help to facilitate within the team, so they explore what are the capabilities that we need and how can we find that, maybe even so they might be the experts on where these people are at. And a lot of times we try to just replace the old person that we had. This person should be exactly the same, or it should match this role. But within agile teams, we don't really talk about roles that much. We talk about capabilities. So it's much more important to look at what is the team supposed to be doing and who would help them in the best way possible, and what type of capabilities or maturity or whatever angle you're looking at to help to grow the team, but also help to develop the team and deliver what they are supposed to do.
Okay. All right. So moving on to bias,
Yes, aware of bias.
So yes, this is of course important, and this is one of the topics that's really close to my heart, and also one chapter in our book as well, because I think bias it's something that more and more people talk about, and you see it in large organizations. I mean, I've seen Google, Facebook that they do, and even PwC and other consultant firms to do a lot of education around bias and how to kind of be more aware of bias and how to use different methods or techniques to reduce the risk of bias. So this is extremely critical in the recruitment process, which I think most of the times today might be subject to bias a lot more than you really are aware of. Because I think when you think about bias, we think more about really, how would you say, graphical that you can really see or have a thought about, but many times it's more of unconscious bias that occur, which is something that you don't believe that you're aware of. For instance, one of my colleagues mentioned that he worked with a company where he had a manager who was in a team, an agile recruitment team, you could call it, but it was more of a panel of 3 people, and he was the manager, and there were 2 other women in this team, and they met a woman for a recruitment, and in an interview, they all 3 sat in, and he instantly said that he had a gut feeling that this is something that's not good with this individual, and I don't think we should hire her. But the other 2, they said, no, we think she's the best candidate of them all so far. So he was kind of eager to push through his decision, but he was smart enough to kind of, okay, I'm gonna sleep on it for the night and kind of figure out why I'm thinking this way. So it was kind of a funny story, I would say, but his kind of initial feeling comes, he understood that the individual, the woman reminded him a lot about his mother-in-law, which he didn't have too good feeling for. So I would say that kind of negative bias that he wasn't aware of about this individual made him have a bad feeling about her, and he didn't want to hire her. But I mean, since he comes down to that, he understood it wasn't about her, it was about him instead. And then he made a decision to hire her, and obviously she was a great hire as well.
So maybe question your first reaction involve experts and people who think differently. It's really a good way of handling it. So some ideas here.
Yeah, exactly. And many times it's kind of really question yourself, kind of dig deeper, because I think a lot of people have good connection with your gut feeling, and many times there is a point to it, but you need to really figure out, okay, where does these feelings come from? Because if you're not aware of where they're coming from, many times these are stages that kind of evolves from if there are negative behaviors or surroundings around you, what people think, and etc. So many times you're not even aware that this is something that comes up from early on in life, which makes it more difficult for you later on. So this really comes down to kind of understanding who you are and where you come from, and what kind of risk that you need to bring into the future.
And I think using the positive thinking hat here could also be really good. Sometimes people in a previous job or something, they've been in an environment which is very different from your environment. So they might flourish and become like superb in whatever they're doing, but in their previous job, maybe they weren't really supported by the manager, they didn't really have the opportunities, and they weren't empowered. So you can't really look at the previous experience. You have to also use a positive thinking hat. So having also that view on, okay, if we give this person the best possible opportunities to grow, what can we help this person with?
Yeah, and I mean, in recruitment, I think that comes down to also, it's a both side of that coin, I think, because many times if you're recruited for, I don't know, a salesperson, you can, oh, I was top one in my last 3 organizations, I had the best sales, etc. But if it really comes down to, you need to also have in what context were this individual and how did they kind of go about their way of doing things. So if you look deeper into understanding, you understand that, okay, context is really important. And even in this, how they're going to succeed in our organization, how is this context right for them or not? I think this is something that you often you miss when you're recruiting.
And a lot of times you want to recruit people who are like you. So that's also a bias that we have. And in teams, they probably want to hire more people like themselves. And is that really what we want them to do? So maybe you as a experience in this field can help the teams also to recruit the best possible person to join the team.
Okay.
And unleash the brain power. One thing that's very dear for me is to unbox your people, so not placing them into roles. This is something that we talk about a lot within the Agile community, removing unwanted structures to help people to grow and to collaborate in the best way possible. And roles in teams maybe doesn't really help people to collaborate. So this is one of the things. And looking for the T-shape. T-shape means that you have a broader experience, maybe not just your expertise, the I. So I individuals who are very experts into one area, they might not be able to work and collaborate with people in the team, and they can't really help the team to work on what's most valuable right now. So having the team prioritizing one piece of thing that we need to do to deliver, then of course it's better if people are also T-shaped. So we talk about maybe full stack developers, and we can think about people as full stack all over. So that's a good thing, but you need to have an expertise in something at least, and help the team to learn your expertise. So that also says a little bit about the people that we might want to bring in as well. And managing the process and not the people, this is also one core thing. So working in the process, you help to improve the process, you don't manage the people. And this is also very, very common, that you might think that you need to manage the people, but they can manage themselves. And that's what we want to aim for, having grown-ups working together. And then maybe removing the details, working with the capabilities of people and not detailed role descriptions, because also in an Agile organization, we want to continuously improve our way of working and the structures that we have. So if we have detailed role descriptions, that's going to hold back people and individuals, the teams, and our ways of working. So keeping them on the minimized level, helping people to understand what they're supposed to do and maybe facilitate that process within whoever they're working with. And then understanding Agile organizations. This is also something that we need to do in the recruiting process, so that we can help to recruit for an Agile organization. Did I cover all of it?
Yeah,
Thomas?
no, and
Yeah.
I agree, and I think a lot comes down to both managing the process and not the people, and kind of the agile capabilities, and don't look too deeply into the detail in roles. So I think that's where a lot of organizations will have difficulties, because I mean, most organizations still today work according to management principles that's been around for a century now. And so I think that change is going to be really difficult if you look outside of other organizations, and where people will face a lot of resistance internally, I would say, also to kind of, I know from experience, a lot of larger organizations have these yearly detailed role descriptions for each block pretty much. And I think those changes will not happen over a day, but I think if you start in your team or in your near area where you can influence changes, I think you should start there, make more pilot projects to kind of showcase, okay, we don't see that this is successful anymore, so we need to kind of change how we view recruitment and how we recruit. So I think those are really important in other organizations to start with small scale and then kind of showcase the benefits.
Role descriptions, this is usually a pitfall that many organizations fall into when starting to become an agile organization or wanting to become one, because they want to write, HR comes in and wants to help and write detailed role descriptions of all the new roles. But when you do that, then you set up the organization for failure, because you're going to have a fixed mindset and you're going to fix the organization based on those. And you're going to have people just maybe stick to those and not help and grow together with the organization and with the teams. And I think so this is a mindset shift that needs to come before, and then you can start to enable the organization to become agile. So I'm going to move on. I think we have a short of time.
Okay. All right, so let's move on. So what and this is, I think, key area. We don't put too much energy into this in the poster, but really for everyone to get why we put this in here is really to be clear that our poster or the concept, it's not a proof for a successful way. You need to really adapt whatever you're doing to your own context, and really be thoughtful. And I think this goes into every time you're looking to hire someone new, or you're looking to change the process, is okay, what context are we in right now? As you said, I mean, from looking at COVID, if we talk to last year in this time of year, looking for the next year, what we're going to do, I think no one could expect what was going to happen. So really the method change according to the context. So which everyone has been forced to do during this year with more video meetings, etc., and interviews online and so like that. So I mean, the process of recruitment has changed during this year, but it probably is going to change again when people start going back to normal or the new normal or whatever. So you need to really figure out, okay, where are we right now, where are we going, what processes and selection methods or whatever is going to make most impact or be most successful in this time.
And this is one of the struggles that we had in our conversations about evidence-based, because if you're innovating in your recruiting processes, you will create evidence that this is working best for us in this context, but maybe you can't find it right now out there. Maybe there's no one who has done this before. So you also need to start to dare to do these experiments, but then it's good to have these principles here: non-discriminating, objective methods, enable psychological safety, because then it's going to be a better way of doing it.
And also when we talk about evidence-based, and we didn't really talk about it in the business critical, but I think you need to start using every information that you have more scientifically, if you would say, but being aware of all the data that you have and kind of putting that to use in different ATS system or whatever you want to use, but kind of really incorporate how do I use the data that we have and kind of learn from the data, because that's, I think, we'll see the most benefits today. It's really how to evolve with the data and kind of involve new technologies into the recruitment process to make it more effective, to make it faster or better for the candidates or whatnot. So really learn how to use data in a proper sense, which I think HR it's getting better at, but still need to improve, I would say.
Mm. And this is an example at Vista Print. They have created a team of agile coaches and HR experts. It's a talent and experience team with a purpose. So not sure if they work with recruitment. I actually talked to one of the people from Vista Print today who was in the learning and development organization. But their mission was to create the best possible environment for the employees and support so that they can support each other and the customers. So they had this purpose, they had a mission, and they worked together. So helping each other and collaborating and supporting the organization in maybe a very new way. And they transformed the HR organization, and then they helped to transform the organization. So you can start within HR, and you can start within different processes and collaborate and help and spread learning about how you have improved. So walk the talk, start to do this yourself. And then, of course, you will enable others to do it in a better way too. So continuously explore together and bring people into your teams.
That's a great example, because I think a lot of people are afraid, okay, I don't know where to start. It's too big of a challenge for us to start. So we're gonna wait a bit more till we're more mature. But I think that's where you kind of fool yourself, because
that's a traditional fixed mindset. So we want to have a growth mindset. So maybe start with this Kanban board. So just visualize your process and start to improve. And maybe bring in someone who can facilitate and help. And maybe a Scrum Master and Agile coach, and then you will evolve this. So that's a really good start.
Perspective will help for sure. More perspective is good.
Oops, I skipped this one. So if you're interested in more of this stuff, you can see that we have recruiting in a nutshell, we have Agile HR in a nutshell, and there's more leadership and other stuff, and working as an Agile team, which might help you start work as an Agile team, recruiting team. So you can go into Dandy People and download these posters and other things that you can find there. And also we have this, that maybe you're interested in starting to do this. Maybe want to do a pilot project. And I know Thomas and I were eager to meet with people in the organization who wants to start to do this. So we might be able to offer you some help in this.
Exactly, and I just wanted to finalize. I think, as we said from the beginning, I think this kind of concept is something that we want also feedback from you guys that are listening in, and please download the poster, dig deeper into what it means and how it means for you as well, to kind of give us, no, I don't agree. So we really want people's input to evolve this further, and of course, if your organization is keen on starting somewhere, please reach out if you feel that we can help out.
Good. So thank you very much for joining in, and I hope we also get to discuss a little bit now.
Yes, hopefully lots of questions.
That was extremely useful. So then we open the session for questions and answers. So if you would like to ask a question, please do so in the Q&A section section. Or raise your hand and we can unmute you so that you can directly ask your question.
It's really nice to hear from some people, if there's anyone who dares to raise a hand.
So maybe one to encourage them, one from me then, me and Thomas. What is the, let's say, the challenge when you work with corporations and when you work with smaller companies, when they want to transform?
I think for me, personally, I prefer smaller corporation, because I think it's a lot easier to start wherever you're starting. It's easier to kind of get started and get people on board, because in large corporations, of course, there's going to be a lot of different ways of doing things, and I think a lot of sections aren't in the same page that you are. So there are different pitfalls, of course, but I think you, even in a larger organizations, you can make changes. And I think a lot of these, at least in Sweden, a lot of the banks, a lot of the large corporations are making this transition into more agile ways of working. So I think either, if you're a large organization, you can still start in your team because you want to make changes.
One of the biggest pitfalls is thinking that you need to know everything first. So just get started and build your team and start to collaborate and learn, and look at it as a learning journey to explore new ways of doing your work in a better way, and working closer together with the people in the organization. So start to build closer relations. That could be that you work together in one part of the organization, and that's where you start maybe with one Kanban board with a couple of teams, and then you start to evolve this way of working together.
Okay, and also maybe some differences in terms of cultures, nationalities. I'm sure you've worked with various cultures, background people, so it's really curious what you can share in that area.
Oh, we have in Sweden we have something called lagom, which means that everyone needs to be pretty much the same, and you don't want to stand out because that's a little bit scary. You should be like in between, like medium, kind of, you could say. So that's a pitfall in Sweden, and people don't really dare to say, "Oh, I've tried this. I like this. I want to do this." So maybe in your culture you're better at maybe starting things and trying things and daring to say what you want. So I think it could be very different in different cultures. But creating that psychological safety, if you work with a multicultural organization, to bring them together and talk about these differences, and creating working agreements and looking at the principles and the values. If you have those as your shared part of your thinking, then it's really going to help you, because then we can also see that we have differences and those are good things. We will bring these differences to the team and in the organization. Is going to help us to become a better team. So I think working with the values and principles here can help you a lot.
And I would say, in my experience, is to give my few cents. I would say that you should, and even in a recruitment process, for instance, you should really go back to, okay, what kind of behaviors are we looking for? What does this mean for us? Because I mean, even within the same language, I see that many times people don't really understand. One word means something for you, and it could mean something for someone else. So really go back to communication and what does this mean for you? Does this mean the same thing that it does for me? So, and that goes even better if you're in different cultures, because there are a lot of other aspects to be aware of, and really kind of question yourself and others. So how do you view this, and really try to understand the other one's perspective.
Also, another point that I really liked in your story was about mentioning bias. I think that each of us has such, and we're most of the times not aware that that we have them until we, like the example that you gave. Is it possible for the people who are not in the recruiting team, but the candidates, methods or tricks that we can try to overcome these? Because all of us, when applying for a job, have encountered such kind of bias. Various, let's say, challenges in that area. How can we as candidates maybe try to facilitate that and avoid them if possible?
You mean from the candidate's perspective, what you as a candidate can do?
Yes.
Ooh, that's a good, also a good different perspective on it. I think it goes down to also there kind of dig deeper into yourself and who you are and where you're coming from. And I think that goes into when you're applying or when you're facing for an interview, you need to really be self-conscious that you know who you are and who you want to present, that you're, I mean, you get at least in Sweden, people are, yeah, exactly. Be who you are and don't be afraid of showing that, I think. Because in the end, I think you do want to work in a corporation or organization that really aligns with who you are, not just put on a professional face, which I think most of us still do. But I think the goal really is, I want to work where I'm appreciated for who I am and where I can contribute the most, and try to be honest to yourself and put yourself out there a bit more.
And the behaviors that you as a candidate will experience during the process, of course, those are expressions of how you actually work in that organization, even though maybe the values on the wall say something different. So I would also maybe ask the people I meet in the process, so how do you do this and why do you do this? And maybe share your experience. I think that's also valuable information for people in the recruiting process, facilitating that to also express, I maybe feel like this when we do like this. I don't know if that's how you want me to feel, but I would suggest maybe if I could do like this, it would be much more comfortable for me. Is that possible? So I think you can also show who you are and what you stand for, and ask for maybe other ways of doing things sometimes.
And I think another example of that is, I think today, still it's very, at least in Sweden, it's very common that you use a cover letter when you apply for a job. But this, I mean, science says that this is pretty much almost useless in the sense of a selection method. And I think here you can really challenge perhaps the employers that you're looking for to make changes in the way, because this is what it really measures, is that you're good at writing a letter and not how you will perform in your job. So I think that's also for you as an organization to think about what kind of methods really add values and show the things that we want to evaluate.
So if we hire journalists, it's good that they're good at writing, maybe. But
yes, that was my my next question. Do you think that applying Agile into the area of recruiting, of course, and not only there, but like you said, it's the way that you need to begin a transformation and make your organization Agile in general. Do you think that CVs and cover letters, like you mentioned, are something from the past?
yes.
Hopefully.
I hope so. I really hope for like human interactions to replace that a lot.
I think I mean, CV it's not gonna go away soon. Hopefully cover letter will soon go away faster, but the CV is something, I mean, if you look at LinkedIn, I mean, pretty much that's a CV, but it's on LinkedIn. So I think these methods will still be around, and there's still ways for us to kind of understand where people are coming from, but you need to think a bit deeper into what you're going forward. And I think that's what people miss when they're recruiting, is that they, as we talked about before, okay, here Anna, she resigned, so we need to replace her with a new Anna, instead of looking ahead, okay, where are we going, where is this team going, what kind of challenges are we facing, and what kind of capabilities do we need in the future. So look ahead a bit more, and I think you will be more successful in the future.
But a lot of organizations that I see now that actually are starting to transform, they don't replace a line manager with a line manager. They replace them with someone who has actually been part of a transformation and has maybe worked Agile and being a Scrum Master or doing other things. But the role of a line manager, that's about to die. And you split those into different areas, and you work as a leadership team instead. So you need people to work in a team and be good leaders, but also being maybe having the experience of being part of a transformation before. So you look for different types of people, and the role might still be there. I actually coached a manager and her team yesterday, and she was recruiting, of course, new managers for her organization, the development organization. And she said, well, HR said that I needed to use this role description for the line manager. She said, I'm not going to use it. We haven't defined a role yet, so I want you to come in and help us define a role. And so that's a very different way of recruiting and showing people who you are and what you're looking for and where we're going, because that's what people are asking. Where do you want to take the organization? Can I fit in? Can I help?
And the results. That's really, really great to share, Mia. So I was just checking if we had other questions from the participants. We have one user who just raised hands. So let me just enable that. Please go ahead.
Hello everyone. It was really nice presentation. My scope of work is not so into recruitment, but it was really helpful for me to listen to what you've presented, and especially I like the team model of the employee or the candidate. In these turbulent times, I do think that pigeonholing someone from the very beginning in recruitment stage even, it's really not good for the organization. And yeah, if we want to develop and to stay attractive at the market. So this team modeling, as okay, we have his or her profile, but we also know and aim maybe for further development other traits or other capabilities. Also nice approach at the very beginning. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Feedback.
But developing people is what we should be doing. And if we could develop people who are not yet in the organization, it will grow the opportunities that we have in the future. So I think that also it spreads a good word around about your company. So
yeah, and it goes back to, I mean, employer branding. Who do you want to show that who you are? I mean, you want people to appreciate the brand and your company in general. So I think it's really important that you don't misbehave or I mean, treat the candidates unfairly, I would say, and then start treating them as you treat your customers, really.
Which is hopefully good, we hope.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully good.
And these days, everyone talks about customer centricity, and this is a conversation we have at work. Customer centricity needs also to involve employee centricity together.
Yeah,
definitely. They go hand in hand. If your people in the organization don't feel well and don't work well together and don't grow, they can't take care of your customers.
Any other volunteers to ask questions or share input for me and Thomas?
I have something that popped up in my mind while we were talking about implementing agility in general in the different processes, HR processes. And I'm wondering, can you give us a kind of an advice? What would be the one or two things that you should tell a manager or an employee that is too rigid for agility, basically? And how would you approach a situation in which you see a resistance, so you can basically bend the person and soften them a little bit to become more agile?
So the question is if they are a little bit rigid around maybe something in their process or something. So one of the things that I hear from HR people recruiting is that we can't show this, like I said, on the board. If we visualize the board and who's in the process, in the recruiting process, that's very sensitive data. So they feel we can't show sensitive data. But yes, you can just write initials, or you could have something else to show who this person is in your recruiting process. It could just be a surname. Then you help them to, okay, maybe we can try this. And also one good advice that we Agile coaches always use, can we maybe try this? So we could try it for maybe 2 weeks, and then we could evaluate and see what happened and see how it felt. Maybe it actually worked, or we could try something different. So working with experiments and then evaluating helps you to adjust, so you don't make a decision that you're going to stick with forever. So that maybe helps them to, okay, maybe we can try this. I actually had a team once that they wanted to start work agile, and wanted to have a Scrum Master, but one person said, no, I don't. And then I asked the team, so is there anyone here who would like to be the Scrum Master? And someone else said, yes, I would. So is it okay for you if this guy tries to be the Scrum Master for 2 weeks, and then you as a team could evaluate if it actually brings value? Okay. So you can help them to work on, but sometimes there could be one person who says, no, I don't believe in this, I don't want to do it. Maybe because they have a fixed mindset and think this is how it's going to be for forever, and I don't see how I fit in. What's in it for me? How is it going to help me or the team?
People are, I think we'll all see in all organizations that people are proposing of change, and I think that's kind of elementary for human beings in general. So you need to really put some energy into that, into understanding where they're coming from, where they're hesitant, and what causes them to feel this way. So really go back to what points of view they have, and try to involve them in the process. So if they're really rigid, okay, so how can we showcase, how can we understand you better? So how was it working today? Is there something that's not working today that you want to improve, or something like that? Start small. I think starting small steps and making them more accustomed to what it really means to be agile, and how you can make those changes. So,
and you can never push anything on them, because then you get resistant right away. So you have to work in an agile way with your agile change too. So involving, like Thomas is saying, is key, of course, and having them making the decisions and not pushing people in. So if someone don't want to do it, so maybe the others can try. Start with those who want to do something. That's a good way forward.
Like the kids when they play, you just see other kids playing, and it becomes interesting to you to join the game as well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Works with grown-ups as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're all kids somewhere deep inside.
Yes, totally agree with you. Well, Mia, Thomas, it was extreme pleasure to have you today and to be able to follow this nice conversation. So for the participants who joined today, please contact Mia and Thomas to continue the discussion. Let's say outside this webinar, I would just like to mention a few words about our next event, which will be in November. So you can see here we are still working on the details on the program. We are doing a collaborative event together with colleagues from the CEE region, SEE region, I'm sorry. So it is called HR Week, and it will have those 5 different tracks: strategic HR, people-centric HR, innovative HR, HR development, and C-level tracks. So we will participate as Sofia chapter in several of them, and the speakers are yet to be announced officially. So keep an eye on those details, and you will receive information from us via the normal regular channels. Just follow and book those dates on your calendar. So thank you very much, and again, Mia, Thomas, it was a pleasure having you, and I'm sure we will be in touch in the future.
Yeah, thank
Have
you.
a good
Nexa.
evening, everyone.
Yeah,
Good evening.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.